I'm less transactionally focused and more relationship focused when it comes to the sales process. For me, it's really been authenticity, curiosity, connection, and really building relationships across an organization and appreciating what people do and how they do it.
Start with value first, and when you start with value, you give yourself the best possible chance for someone to actually want to speak with you.
The skill has become your ability to interpret, communicate, analyze, and deliver that information.
Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. It's about utilizing that time as effectively and as technically as possible to find success. Welcome to the podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that works with professional services firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Brian Coad, Managing Director of the Coad Group, a company that maximizes the value of clients' businesses through successful exits, strategic mergers, and acquisitions. Brian has spent 35 years in financial services, 20 years in investment banking, and the last 15 years in asset management across a variety of platforms from public to private, startup to middle market. Not an investor or banker by trade, but a builder, owner, and operator of businesses. Brian, welcome to the pod.
Great. Good afternoon. Thank you.
No worries at all. I'm looking forward to having a conversation today around some really interesting topics, but I guess the best place to start really is a bit more about you and your background and the journey to where you are today. So could you share a bit more about the journey of becoming managing director and what led you to specialize in M&A consulting?
For me, I really grew up in the financial services business back in the 90s when the industry was going through an incredible period of consolidation. You were seeing boutique or regional investment banks merge into national boutiques, which then were ultimately really changing the dynamics of how the business model was operated. It became much more of a capital game and less about, let's say, a fragmented lower middle market approach to investment banking and capital markets. For me, it was really during that time, there were opportunities to create and build new platforms. And out of that, I really learned to appreciate business and how to build a business, how to run a business, and how to operate a business. And so over those 35 years, I've really traveled a number of different platforms, worked with a number of different people, and built a variety of different businesses across the entire capital stack, which has been, I think, for me, an incredibly interesting and enjoyable process. While at the same time, it's given me the opportunity to really interact with a number of different types of businesses. And I think that's probably the most interesting aspect of what I do. And really 90% of businesses are the same. And so I think they all have the similar challenges, opportunities that you're going to see across a variety of different platforms. And that 10% is really unique to the particular business. So everybody deals with the same problems, opportunities, and that's really what led me down that path.
I think that's always really interesting to hear, especially with the different problems that different business owners and everyone experiences in different areas. But to get to your position within an organization, a leadership position, it can be particularly challenging in itself, the journey. Are the leadership philosophies involved that have helped you, I guess, enter into this side of your career and really find the success that you found?
Right. For me, it's really been authenticity, curiosity, connection, and really building relationships across an organization and appreciating what people do and how they do it, and knowing that there's always a reason that people do things the way they do. They want to be appreciated for that, but it's always in thinking about how can we build something bigger. And as organizations get bigger and achieve more success, the value proposition changes within an organization relative to what the value that you bring in a 10-person firm versus a 50-person firm. And the value that you brought in a smaller platform is not the type of value that you're going to need to bring in a bigger platform in order for the organization to be successful. And so for me, it's really been a journey about building relationships, experiences, and being curious about how you build and grow a business and curious about what people bring to the organization, because they do bring the whole person. That's really the primary focus that I have relative to leading and building businesses, is really an appreciation for who people are and what they do, and ultimately what they're trying to accomplish both personally and professionally.
I love that you said that, primarily because it made me think of, I don't know if you've heard of Ben Francis, the now CEO of Gymshark, but Gymshark now $1 billion company. He essentially founded that organization, that company from the age of 22, 23 years old. And he talks about how when he first founded that the company, the first 0 to 1 million, 0 to 10 million was him just doing it through brute force. There was a level of foundership amongst what he was doing. But when he moved into the realms of $100 million company, it became a different level of leadership, and he had to step away from that CEO role and take that role away from himself and go, no, I'm going to go to different areas of the organization and be a leader somewhere else as a founder, because this level of company requires a different kind of leader to be able to help grow. So I think that's really interesting in terms of that size and life cycle of an organization that you mentioned there. In terms of then, one of the biggest challenges for most organizations when they're growing, scaling, or just starting up is hiring the right talent, right? And we always see terminology going out there about hire that A-team person that will be worth 20 or 10 B and C team players, right? What strategies have you found most effective for identifying and recruiting A-team players in, I guess, the M&A consulting space?
I think for me, whether it's M&A or an operating business, I've found that the challenge is to pull myself away from the individual and actually leverage and lean on others to evaluate the actual talent that I'm considering hiring. Because for me, regardless of if I'm a solo practitioner or if I have a small business, there are so many things that I can't see, and I'm more focused on the personal aspect of it and building the relationship with a potential candidate. And I think bringing people in that can provide different perspectives, knowing the type of person I am and what I'm looking for, I think ultimately is the soundest approach. And that followed by really, I think, understanding who the person is and people that have worked with them in the past. And you can get a sense from that in talking to people that they've worked with about how committed they are to the individual. You can give a positive reference, and you can also give an incredibly informative reference without causing any particular legal or HR issues. And I think those are the two keys for me in finding the right individual and the right person.
I think what strikes out to me amongst some of the things you've mentioned there is you sound like a very relational individual in terms of your leadership style, in terms of who you're bringing into the organization. How important is building relationships when you're building a company, building an organization, bringing in business? What effect does good relationship building, good client relationship building have on an organization?
Yeah, to me, it's everything. And I think it's building those relationships when times are good so that you actually have the ability to lean on them when times get more challenging, whether that's an employee, whether that's a partner, whether that's a customer or a client. I think those are the things that are critical. And I think too, for me, I'm less transactionally focused and more relationship focused when it comes to the sales process. So if there's no transaction to be done at the time that you're prospecting or speaking with a potential client, to me, there's still an opportunity to build a relationship. And then the real challenge is to continue to build that relationship over time where it's appropriate if there does not happen to be a transaction available at the time or one that makes sense, and really figuring out, okay, who are the potential customers and clients that I align with philosophically that I want to continue to foster that relationship with, that ultimately will pay dividends down the road, both for them and for myself.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's a really a long-term mindset towards building a pipeline, right? And understanding that it's not a transactional sale all the time. You need to be building and fostering those relationships to be able to generate opportunities now, maybe in the future, maybe never, but maybe you can help them out in some way and build that relationship. So I think that's really interesting. In terms of then sell-side group, how do you approach strategic planning, and how often do you revisit and adjust your strategy for your clients and things like that?
I think for us, it's more every probably 6 to 12 months. We'll step back and see what's effective, what's not effective. How can we be better attuned to what's going on in the market, and how can we be more supportive of our clients and potential clients? And it's more of an ongoing process for us. And given the dynamics of markets and how quickly they can change, we're constantly trying to figure out, are there different ways, different approaches that we can use that will be, resonate with clients and actually highlight the value proposition that we believe we have.
You mentioned there, I think it's interesting, having your ear to the market, ear to the ground, understanding what's going on. What trends are you currently seeing in the M&A space right now, and how are you currently positioning your clients and sell side to capitalize on those trends?
Right now there's a lot of, I think, seller interest.
Sure.
In the lower middle market space. I think there are a number of challenges given the size and given what ultimately investors are looking for. They are looking for bigger businesses and probably businesses that are, I think, larger in scope relative to the capital that they want to put to work. And so I think, the lower middle market, although very active, at times can be challenging given the size. When you're talking about businesses that are $500,000 to $1 million in EBITDA, there isn't much really that investors will want to do unless they have a specific need in that space. I know just given the dynamics with the current administration, I think you're seeing a lot of owners trying to figure out what's next and how best to manage in this environment, and really figuring out where are they going to go and what the ultimate impact will be to the business that they're trying to build.
No, it makes a lot of sense, and especially with the current debacle with tariffs and economical things that are currently becoming more topical at the moment, I can imagine there's a little bit of unrest or unease there. So I guess buyers might not commit as much, whereas people are more likely to go, well, let me cash out now, get it out while there's I guess there could be a pessimistic attitude to the economy at times that can drive decision making. Things are changing in the world at the moment, and one of the topics I love to talk about is a 2-letter word, and it begins with A and ends in I. It's something that is taking the world by storm, whether we like to admit it or not, and some often are going against the grain, saying no, still a long way away. But I think there was an episode the other night on Diary of a CEO where Stephen Bartlett had a debate amongst 3 experts talking about AI. So it's very much at the forefront of what most people are talking about. Talk to me about AI. What tools are you or applications have you found most valuable in your work, and how are you currently integrating them into your processes, systems, if at all?
Yeah, it's probably, I think at this point, it's in the day-to-day work environment, it's more episodic. I definitely see the application and the opportunity. I think it's getting the time to really understand how to leverage the technology and utilize it in ways that I haven't thought about to date, or I've thought about but don't know really how to execute. And that's been the challenge. I think I'm starting to, with the transcript services that they have, I haven't used them much, but I know I need to, and I know I need to figure out how to put them to work. And I think that's an area that I really need to focus on, because I can see it in even one-offs and the power that it has. And I do think you'll reach a tipping point where it then will start to really take over from a day-to-day process perspective, and understanding how to leverage it, prompt it, and utilize it in ways that I haven't yet, I think will ultimately change the way that I work on a daily basis, and ultimately make me incredibly more productive in ways that I can't imagine today.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, because I've had this conversation a few times, and I think we've had the conversation previously about how the new generation, those in college at the moment, are very much adopting AI at a scale that we, when growing up, it just wasn't around, right? We were just about happy with texting and being able to, having to top up our texting bills and things like that to be able to text people. So the drastic change that's happening amongst the youth and the next generation. I guess my question to you is, what's your take on bringing in people into your organization that are on the younger end, who are a little bit more savvy with AI, and how do you see AI then, if you were to go down that direction, transforming the M&A consulting industry specifically, or your business specifically?
Yeah,
that's something that's crossed your mind.
It has. I think that from a trend perspective, I think it's changing the dynamic of work and the structure of an organization, much like something it's escaping me, but there was, in a knowledge-based economy, you see the power of data and the power of information and the ability to organize it. And that used to be a skill. Now I think AI is taking that skill, and now the skill has become your ability to interpret, communicate, analyze, and deliver that information. That, to me, is the real power of AI. And it dictates a different type of individual that I would be looking for, someone that has critical thinking skills, that can form an argument, that can communicate, that can write. I think it puts a larger onus on someone's thought process and more of the intangible piece of the work that I think sometimes can get lost, because you're basically eliminating paralegals. You're eliminating anything that's rote is going to be eliminated, whether it's, I can drop a whole thing into AI and say, go ahead and summarize this for me, give me the salient points, and provide me a spreadsheet output of X, Y, and Z. That's just taking someone an entire position of someone that used to do all that and basically turn it into a 5-minute, if that, task. And so then it's really then taking the time to understand the output. That's where I think the value is going to come.
Yeah.
And that's where I think things will change dramatically on the business side.
I think it's the ability to now have critical thought. It's that critical thinking piece and hiring people to be at a level that is expected, a higher level than what an entry level would have looked like, right? Because it's eliminating those repetitive tasks and making things more efficient. So it becomes a case of, okay, well, the information, we're still getting that information. We're getting it in a quicker fashion and a more summarized fashion than maybe if a paralegal or an analyst might have got themselves, right? But the expert above it still needs to go through that information, still needs to extrapolate the information from the data, and then still needs to articulate that in a way where the client goes, okay, well, that makes sense to me, rather than the client having to just go, okay, let me type into ChatGPT what they think.
That's right.
Because I actually had a conversation not long ago on one of these podcasts, and he was a psychological consultant, and he was talking about how he considers AI as a digital psychopath, right? Because AI often tells you what you want to hear. Right? And it can very easily, if you do not have expertise in an area, let's say tax planning, you type in, oh, can I do this? It can very well give you the reasons why you should do that. And it comes out to being certain things aren't 100% true. So it's very interesting to hear, like, it's 100% early days still, and the expertise level still needs to be there, but 100% agree with you. It's a case of critical thinking trumping on top of that. In terms of then a digital transformation that's currently happening in the world, what digital strategies have you found most effective for generating, I guess, high quality of opportunities within your space? Is there anything that is currently working at the moment?
To me, it's AI outreach is difficult and challenging because there is a general sense that prospects can see AI generated outreach. The key is leveraging that, and where we found success is really leveraging AI to basically compile all the opportunities that we see and then really structure them in a way that be personalized in getting out to people. I see through LinkedIn, I see podcasts, I see all these types of opportunities where we can actually increase sales funnel, so to speak. And then once I think that, then it becomes more a relationship and maintaining it, but it's putting in the personal side of it. But I think people are willing to engage, but you have to bring some value to the table. And I think displaying that value, whether it's through posts or through white papers, through conferences, those are the things that I think ultimately will drive and are driving activity for us.
Love it. I think it's so interesting to hear that, and I couldn't agree with you. I always preach about this: start with value first, and when you start with value, you give yourself the best possible chance for someone to actually want to speak with you, right? If you're not providing any value, then how can you expect anyone to come to you and go, well, give me more? Especially in a sophisticated market, in more saturated markets where there's more outreach technology, more outreach AI. How do you actually make yourself heard through the noise? So I think is really interesting. So in this segment of the podcast, I like to call the Entrepreneur's Room. And it's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business leaders and business owners think and operate in their business. So the first question I'd like to ask at this stage of the podcast is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
The bulk of the day, well, I would say the day is spent between both outreach, building cold calling, or, cold relationships, continuing to foster warm relationships, and also working on a number of engagements throughout the day. So it'll vary, but it's a day that's as varied as it is long.
I can imagine it can be very, very long day, especially when you're with cold outreach, and that's our area where we help a lot of our clients. It can take a lot of time, and it is very time consuming, and you have to be on top of it. So 100% I agree with you there. In terms of then as a leader of the business, running the business is always an important, whether it's in your own department, the full business, whatever it is. What are the most important metrics for you when looking at the business?
For me, it's utilization, it's number of engagements, and it is number of opportunities that are in the pipeline, and where time is being spent relative to those engagements, and how those types of engagements ultimately shake out.
Sure. You've got it ready there. I love that question, because often who knows what they're thinking about, right? Sometimes people have to think about it, and that means, to me, it's not top of mind, right? But when you can say it like that, you know exactly what's important to you, what you're looking at. So in terms of then growing the organization, we're a growth podcast. We like to ask questions where we understand how businesses grow. How are you currently growing your business? What business development activities are you doing? And I know you mentioned there you do outreach and cold outreach and cold calling, things like that. How else are you currently growing the business?
In so many cases, it's word of mouth and it's referrals. So, and being open to opportunities. I think those are probably the most interesting, and continue. I think too, by leveraging others within a particular engagement, you're also bringing in people outside of that to participate, also then broadens out the opportunity. So I'm seeing that kind of growth and that kind of opportunity is more, less on the focus of prospecting, but more incidental, but more of a collaborative approach to a particular engagement or opportunity.
There's nothing more helpful than a warm inbound lead that has built the trust already from a referral or word of mouth, right? It makes a sales process, and I'm sure as someone that goes out to cold markets and is doing prospecting, a warm lead is so much more fun to have a conversation with than a cold lead, because there's a lot more work that's involved with the cold side of things, right? In terms of then, I guess you've been in business many years now, and you've had a lot of experience in leadership and 35 years in the industry itself. And I'm sure you've done many things in your time that just didn't work, or were lessons learned, failures that happened. What's the biggest lesson you can share with us today with regards to what someone can take away today?
Doesn't have to be perfect. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, or good be the enemy of perfect. Perfect be the enemy of good. Something along the lines of just it's not always going to be exactly as you want it to be. It's going to be messy, and just be comfortable with that.
That's a brilliant lesson. I think, especially when I first started running the business, it was very much a case of, I need to have the perfect website, I need to have the perfect logo, I need to have a perfect this, I need to have a perfect that. And you often get yourself bogged down on getting things to a standard where, at the end of the day, as long as there's something, no one cares that much, right? And it's a case of get out there, get something out there, iterate if it's wrong, change it, but don't think that what you're going to send out first time around is going to be the perfect thing. And learning along the way is very much finding that right thing. So I think that's a great lesson for sure.
Exactly.
In terms of then, what keeps you excited about the future of the business? What is it that's keeping you going?
I think continuing to learn and grow from a perspective of learning about people and businesses and how they succeed. To me, those are the most exciting aspects of it, and strategy and growth, and how they built a business from nothing and taken it to where it is now, and how they want to build it into the future. Those are the things that are truly interesting, and things that I'd love to continue to do. And that's what drives me, both with my business and then with others. And
I love that. Brian, I like to end every single podcast with the same question. It is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
Right now?
Yeah.
What we just talked about, leveraging AI.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I think that is going to, the ability to actually leverage it, utilize it, understand it, and employ it, I think would essentially be akin to hiring 3 analysts or 3 associates for the cost of, whatever Anthropic or Claude is a month, or ChatGPT. So that's where those are the things that are front and center for me right now, is how to really take the time to leverage that. If I could just magic wand, that would be to have all that knowledge and understanding of how to leverage the tool and leverage it in a way that actually push the business forward. Because I do think that, I made a note to myself that is an opportunity in really this market, in helping leaders and owners understand how to take this technology and leverage it both for their existing staff and growing it in ways that they can actually start to get better feedback from how the business is doing without much investment in infrastructure or in people.
100%. I think AI, once you can find what works in your own business and how you can leverage it in your own business, and every business is obviously different, 100% it is a competitive advantage, especially with lots of organizations that aren't necessarily looking at it in the same way, or maybe aren't looking at it in a sophisticated manner as well. So I think it's really interesting to hear that.
It's the thing that I read this article or paper years ago called The Mendacity of Excellence. And it talked about, it basically was an analysis of swimming. And what I took away from it was that all swimmers, no matter how much time you put in the pool, you will not drop time. It's impossible. The only way that at a point that you'll drop time is improving your technique. And that to me is where AI comes in, is that you can put as much time into the day and try to get things done, but you're going to reach a point where that you just can't get any more done. But what you can do is if you can improve your technique, you can then really leverage up and achieve so much more.
Yeah.
And that's where I see AI. That's the analogy I would give.
I think that's a phenomenal analogy, and that is spot on. I think that technique level, it reminds me of a conversation I had previously with another business owner who talks about his golf swing. And a golf swing from here and moving your golf swing from there to there feels like you're moving your arm is all the way here. But that technique change can add distance to your swing that you would not otherwise. And it's exactly that technique of everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. It's about utilizing that time as effectively and as technically as possible to find success. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. It's been a great conversation.
No, I enjoyed it.
It's been really interesting to hear your insights and things like that. For all our viewers and listeners listening that might want to reach out to you, where would they go? How would they find you?
They can find me at either sellsidegroup.com or they can find me at bcode@thecodegroup.com.
Fantastic. Well, Brian, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your time today, and have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thank you.
All right then.